We are now 2 weeks and 2 days away from the primary in North Carolina. And even though I think people are going to get confused about this whole congressional thing, the only primary that will not be held on March 15th due to this recent court ruling from the Court of Appeals is the congressional contest, and everything else will be done, including state treasurer. And here in the studio with me is an old friend, Dale Fowell. Dale has held many high offices in North Carolina. He was in the House of Representatives, I believe, 4 terms.
Correct.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
He was also the Speaker Pro Tem, which means essentially you're the number 2 guy under the Speaker in the House of Representatives when you were there.
Correct.
Under Tom Tillis?
That's Senator Tillis, right?
Now Senator Tom Tillis. And when Governor McCrory was elected in 2012 and took over in 2013, he tapped this man right here, Dale Fowell, to handle one of the biggest problems that the state faced. And so he was named Assistant Secretary of Commerce for the state of North Carolina. And you were when the Republicans took when McCrory took office, we owed the federal government in the state of North Carolina because of back unemployment the reimbursements that had not been paid. How much did we owe, Dale?
At the peak, $2,700,000,000.
So when you guys took office, nearly $3 billion owed to the federal government that was from money that had not been paid back during Bev Perdue's term, right?
Correct. Not to be confused with the $3 billion budget deficit they inherited also.
Yeah.
This is in addition to that.
All right, so you're running for state treasurer, but I want to ask you about that accomplishment first because Governor McCrory asked you to come in and be the guy that kind of took charge of that unemployment problem and paying the federal government back, and you got her done.
Well, we did, and thank you for having us. We're glad to be back in pirate country. It's a beautiful day in eastern North Carolina.
It is, isn't it? You picked a great day to be here.
The North Carolina, because of the reforms of the unemployment system, has become a national leader, not only in terms of the speed of paying off that debt and building the surplus, but also in the cutting down of waste, fraud, and abuse and the increase in customer service. You know, the credit for that progress really goes to 3 different groups, all of which start with the letter P. Number 1 are the people of this state, the employers of this state that pay into this system. You know, all that $2.7 billion in debt and that $280 million in interest was all paid off by the employers of North Carolina. We don't get any money from the legislature or from Congress. Second group is, starting with P, are the policymakers, the House and the Senate members who created something called House Bill 4, which I had the responsibility of implementing. And the third are the hardworking people of our agency who, when they were unleashed and liberated, actually, to come up with the good ideas to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse, they had dozens, hundreds of great ideas that allowed this progress to take place. Now, the bottom line is that over a 32-month period, we went from a $2.7 billion deficit to a $1 billion surplus, which now has produced $600 million of surcharge, federal and state unemployment tax relief for North Carolina businesses so that they can use that to hire more people.
So now, and I got my letter.
Correct.
Now, your unemployment insurance, if you run a business in North Carolina, the cost of that has actually been reduced instead of escalating every year like it did during the years the Democrats were in there. And so if you run a business now, it's actually saving you money. I mean, and that's real proof that you can do it if you need to and if you have to. But, you just have to have the political will to do it.
Yeah, and also, as I mentioned earlier, cutting down on waste, fraud, and abuse. We started requiring photo ID for the first time this century so that people who had been filing on the internet had to come into our local offices within the first 4 weeks and prove to us they are who they said they were.
Now, these are people who say they were unemployed.
Correct.
But you're saying that there were people who were getting unemployment that were defrauding the state?
Correct. You and I know about enough about each other right now that we could both leave here in an hour and file for unemployment using each other's identification. And then you never had to prove you are who you said you were, unless in the unlikely event you got audited. Now we're requiring people to come into our local DWS offices where they get employment services and also produce a photo ID, because ironically, you had to have a photo ID to get a job in North Carolina and the United States. So if it was a requirement for employment, I made it a requirement for unemployment. Common sense.
Dale Fowell running for state treasurer. We're going to get to the campaign in a minute, but you've been in the public eye for a long time. Give us a little bit about your background. I know you're a CPA. You
Sure.
actually a CPA by trade.
Sure.
Give us your background for folks who don't know. And your beautiful wife Cynthia has made the trip with you this morning. I remember the old days when you used to come down here to see me. You would ride your motorcycle down here, but you didn't ride that today.
We didn't, but she goes with me as we do campaign on the motorcycle. But it's just the way things were happening today. Yeah, I know it's hard for this to come across to your listeners, but I'm sitting here not because of my mind, but it started with my hands. You know, I think that any time that you start life using your hands and your back, it teaches you things that affect your heart and your mind. So I was a blue-collar worker for a third of my life, starting at the age of 10 or 11. And then at the age of 22, while I was a garbage collector and a motorcycle mechanic, the guy that owned the garbage company said, "You've got a pretty good head on your shoulders. You ought to think about going to college." So at a late age of 21, 22, with the responsibilities of a mother and a mortgage, I walked into UNCG and entered their adult student program. Worked 70 hours a week and took 15 credit hours each semester and finished in 3.5 years with an accounting major, took the CPA exam, passed it all the first sitting, got a master's degree in accounting while I was working in the investment business, and then retired from the oldest investment banking company in the world, which was Alex Brown.
Pretty good for a motorcycle mechanic.
Well, it is, but you know, all these candidates that you hear and your listeners and viewers hear on TV, they always talk about fixing things, but they've never fixed anything.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's your soul or a motorcycle or the unemployment system, you got to know how to deconstruct something to understand what makes it work.
Well put.
So anyway, that's what God made me better at than I think anyone else in the world, to take my blue collar background, my white collar experience, and the last third of my life has been in public service. I love saving minds, saving lives, and saving money for North Carolinians. It's what God made me better at than I think anyone else. And we have some huge threats facing North Carolina that I look forward to solving as the next state treasurer.
Now, you have resigned from the Commerce Department.
I have.
You finished and got an attaboy from the governor.
I did.
And he thanked you for the great job that you did there. And now you resigned in December because you had declared that you were going to run for state treasurer.
That's correct. And I think it's important for people all across the state to know that when it comes to public service, you don't need a law to tell you what's right and what's wrong. I thought it was the right thing to do not to run for office while I was the Assistant Secretary of Commerce and resign that position. But I'll tell you, as we came down Wade Avenue yesterday past the old Rex Hospital where I was actually born, in the building that I just vacated, it is emotional because there are a lot of hardworking, great employees that I've grown to respect over the last state employees over the last 3 years. So I resigned, and now we're out running for state treasurer. It's most of your listeners and viewers can't tell you who the state treasurer currently is, but they better know who the next one is.
Or what the state treasurer does. By the way, our current state treasurer is a Democrat.
Correct.
Janet Cowell.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of talk that she was going to maybe step up and run for United States Senate or whatever. She's decided not to do that. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the job of the state treasurer, because most people don't even know what that job is. What does the state treasurer do?
Well, there was a state treasurer who's considered one of the best in the United States for 25 years. His name was Harlan Bowles. Mm-hmm. And he had this book called The Keeper of the Public Purse. And on page 143 of that book, Harlan states that the state treasurer of North Carolina has more statutory and constitutional responsibilities and duties than any other elected official in North Carolina. So we're not considered the bread, eggs, and milk of the ballot box, but we are going to be this November, because in addition to over 15 other duties, the state treasurer is the chair of the Banking Commission, which regulates all banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. Chair of the Local Government Commission, which approves the issuance of all governmental debt at any level, plus nonprofit debt. The state treasurer is one of only 2 elected voting members of the State Board of Education. And my 8-year experience on the Forsyth County Board of Education, Winston-Salem, will hold me in good stead there. Finally, the state treasurer is responsible for the 10th largest pool of money in the United States sitting in one place.
No kidding.
It's the state. You're supposed to say, "Are you serious?" Because that's the name.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So that's the name of our series. But and $90 billion, and this is the pension plan for our state employees.
And say that again. It's the 10th largest pile of money in the country.
Public pool of money in the United States.
Now,
$90 billion is 3 times larger than the market capitalization of BB&T.
Wow. So we have $90 billion sitting in a fund that the state treasurer has to manage. You would make the decisions on how that money is invested.
That's correct. And that fund is sending out between $4 and $5 billion a year just in benefits to retirees across North Carolina.
Of which my wife is one, of whom my wife is one.
Mm-hmm. And the third is that the state treasurer is responsible for the what I consider the unfunded state health plan. There have been promises made to folks like your wife and state employees across North Carolina for basically lifetime health care for the rest of their life. But no money was ever put aside, unlike the pension plan, for that promise to them. So my point of saying that is that, and to Janet Kyle's credit, the state health plan has been broke and bankrupt for a long period of time, and no one wanted responsibility for it. She actually raised her hand and volunteered for that tough job several years ago. But the fact is it's a threat to North Carolina's balance sheet. We have actuarial reports that show that there should be $3 billion a year put into this health plan, just the health plan, for the next 15 years in order to pay down this liability. That doesn't include the pension plan. So the total of these 2 plans could take up to $4.2 billion of the state budget, which is almost 22% of North Carolina's budget, just for these 2 expenditures. It's a huge responsibility.
This is a crazy question, but if we've got $90 billion in the retirement plan, could you not use the earnings off of that to fund the health plan?
You couldn't and stay out of jail.
So that would be you can't mix and match that money.
Well, but more importantly, and it's a great question for this reason. They're assuming that the state pension plan is going to be earning 7.25%. It has not achieved that in 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. And they just reported the earnings for last year, and they earned 0.25%.
Wow.
But you're paying out $5 billion a year in benefits.
Right.
So that pension plan has to create its own juice, so to speak.
Right. So it has to sustain itself.
It has to sustain itself, and
right.
and these are real threats. But these problems
So if you were earning 7%, you'd have enough money probably to fund something else. I don't
barely.
I don't know what the restrictions on it would be, but and that brings up another interesting point. How is I'm assuming that as state treasurer, you are responsible for investing that money.
Correct.
And you have to be careful not to lose the money of the state employees that are counting on these benefits. So you have to be pretty shrewd at investing money. And I know that you also probably have to be pretty conservative, do you not? You have to be
very conservative. And you have to be. The first thing you have to do is you have to communicate to all the participants, the taxpayers, the legislators, and the participants. You have to communicate what the reality is over the next 10 years about how much this money is going to grow and how much money is going to be sent out just for our pension obligations.
Yeah.
But the health care is a much bigger problem that's facing us. It's a big threat.
Right.
And the great thing about the health care is that, or both these problems, is that they're estimable and they're probable, but they're solvable. There's no excuse. And we're sitting here in the medical mecca of East Carolina University. There's no excuse for the largest purchaser of something not to be able to do it better, cheaper, and more efficiently on behalf of participants. That's what I'm loving about the opportunity of being the next state treasurer. Because I had employees that work for me in the Division of Employment Security. They had to work 4 days a month to pay the family premium on the state health plan.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which had 700,000 other participants in it. Think of the buying power. So somebody who buys that much health care, it's the largest purchaser of health care in North Carolina, should be able to do it better and cheaper on behalf of participants. And that's what I'm loving about this opportunity.
So how many people are retired in North Carolina in this plan? Did you say 700,000?
There's 700,000 people in the plan. There's
some of them are probably employee family members and those kind of things.
That's correct. But because of the price of the family coverage, if you're healthy or young, you don't participate in this plan. You take the free coverage for virtually free for $15 or $20 a month.
Yeah.
And then you go outside and buy this. We need to get the plan healthier and younger. And if we do that, we can drive down family premiums. And when you drive down family premiums, then you make the plan younger and healthier even more, which drives down family premiums even more. This is just a calculus, just like any other insurance company.
Yeah. Dale Fowell, candidate for state treasurer, and he will be on the ballot on March the 15th. And I think that you do have a primary opponent. You do not have a primary opponent. You were about to have one. That's what I remember.
Okay.
You were about to have a primary opponent, but I think you scared him off. So you will not.
Was that you?
No.
Okay.
But actually, it was someone who used to work for us.
Okay.
Our friend, well, I won't say who it was. But anyway, I actually was called by somebody who said, I'm thinking about running for state treasurer. And my response was, you will not beat Dale Fowell. So anyway, he decided to run for something else. I think he's running for insurance commissioner. All right, we got like 3 or 4 minutes left. Tell us why you're running for treasurer and why people should trust you to handle the state's money.
Well, trust comes from experience and track record, and people can go to dalefallwell.com not only to contribute. These are very expensive races, but I can tell you, no candidate can get more out of $100 than I can.
I believe that.
Yes.
Cynthia's over there shaking her head too.
Yes.
Yeah.
She wants. People need a thrifty state treasurer, but the main reason is that these problems have to be solved. When you start looking at the possibility of just 2 things in state government, of all the things that people think about, just 2 things requiring $4 billion worth of appropriation, your audience needs to understand whether their issue is education, roads, mental health, higher education, whatever their issue is, money is going to be diverted away from that to pay for these obligations. These are what we in the accounting world call above the line. So the fact is that these are threats to North Carolina's balance sheet, and it's critically important that you put someone in there who has the integrity, the ability, and the passion to solve these problems. And if the person doesn't have the first one, the other 2 don't matter. You can have all the passion and the ability in the world, but if you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. I've had a great track record, and a leading Democrat actually made an online contribution to me a few weeks ago, and I called and thanked him for that. He said, "Let me tell you why I contributed to your campaign." He said, "You're the only person that I know in Raleigh of the last 12 years that didn't change." And what happens so often when people elect folks, they change. He said, "You were 6 years in the minority where you were highly successful under Speaker Black, Speaker Hackney, President Bassanite, Governor Easley, and Governor Perdue, 21 major pieces of legislation that save lives, money, and minds, no vetoes." And he said, then you became the Speaker Pro Tem, and you continued to operate and act and be the same person you were when you were in the minority party sitting on the back row. And then you went to be part of the cabinet to fix this bankrupt and broken unemployment system, and you're the same person today as you were 12 years ago. He said that's what people need in the state treasurer. Somebody who's not going to let limousines and the office of the state treasurer turn their head from the right thing to do. That's why people should elect me. And the second thing this gentleman said is that, and plus for selfish reasons, I need you to go and do the next right thing for North Carolina. The next right thing is, as you know, because you've had me on here before, we were the national leader in reforming our workers' comp system, which is starting to have huge positive impacts, not only for injured workers, but also for the businesses in North Carolina. We've become the national leader of implementing these unemployment reforms where we've increased customer service, paid down debt, and cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse. We can be the national leader in fixing these, what we call the off-balance sheet obligations in North Carolina, because this is afflicting every state in the country. And we can be a national leader in that also. It's very exciting.
That's I believe all of that. I believe you have the integrity and the experience. I think you've proven yourself in the state of North Carolina beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can handle money. And that's what this job's all about for the most part. So I think you'll be our next state treasurer. But we got to wait till November to find out.
We do. And people can go to DaleFowell.com. However, I'm the only Dale on the presidential ballot, as far as I know. So however they choose, remember my name.
All right, one last question.
Yes. Okay.
What's with a bowling pin? You brought a bowling pin in here, and you never mentioned it. So what's it all about?
The bowling pin represents the fact that when you're trying to change a culture and fix these bankrupt and broken state agencies, if you think you're in a game where you have 120 balls to knock down 120 pins, you're in the wrong game. You need to go home immediately. It's all about clarity of thought and having things in the right sequence. That's what bowling is. So you got to figure out what pin to hit so that when you hit it, it knocks down other pins to the benefit of what you're trying to correct.
Gotcha.
So photo ID for unemployment benefits was a huge bowling pin for us because it knocked down a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. So that's what the bowling pin represents.
You've never come to be on my show and without bringing all these props. You're the carrot top of politics. Which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Is that a reflection of how my hair looks this morning?
Great to see you.
Thank you, and thank you for the service that OBX Media provides to the people of Eastern North Carolina.
IBX, but we appreciate it. Yeah, exactly.
And folks like me.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yes.
Appreciate you making the drive down this morning. It's always great to see you and Cynthia, your wife, who's with you this morning. Dale Fowell, who I predict will be the next state treasurer of North Carolina. Thank you for coming, Dale. Good to see you.